Yang Berhormat, Senator Datuk Seri Amir Hamzah, Finance Minister 2, Yang Amat Mulia Tunku Ali Ridauddin, Ibni Tuanku Mukris, Tunku Besar Seri Menanti, and Chairman of Astro, board members of Khazanah Nasional, esteemed KMF speakers and panelists, and distinguished guests. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. So, ladies and gentlemen, first of all, I'd like to personally welcome Yang Berhormat Senator Datuk Seri Amir Hamzah, Azizan, Malaysia's Finance Minister number 2, to our 20th installment of Khazanah Megatrends Forum. Now, we're honored to have you here today, reaffirming KMF's role as a space where policy, capital, and ideas come together. Each year, we bring together diverse minds, investors, entrepreneurs, academics, and policymakers to wrestle with a big question of our time. And this year's theme of risk, and uncertainty could not be more fitting for the moment we live in. At every Khazanah Megatrends Forum, we ask ourselves a simple but difficult question. What does it mean to invest wisely in an age of uncertainty? Now, that question feels heavier today, as our Prime Minister reminded us in his special address. The world is now caught between competing visions of disorder. Technology, demography, and geopolitics are colliding in unpredictable ways, reshaping not only markets, but our sense of stability and purpose. And for an investment house like Khazanah, this is not an abstract debate. We live at the intersection of these forces between capital and country, between opportunity and obligation. So we gather here each year not to forecast the future, but to strengthen the imagination and the discipline needed to face it. Now, forum began with Professor Sir David Spiegelhalter, who reminded us that good judgment under uncertainty begins with humility, to admit that we don't know, and imagination to think of what might happen. Now, Professor, if you've read his book, that quiz which he gave in his speech is actually in his book. There are 10 questions. And I have to admit, I was severely negative after those 10 questions. So when he did his 5 questions, I was wise enough to put 5 for everything, so I got 0. So maybe the next time I can get some points. But humility keeps us honest about our limits. And imagination keeps us from being paralyzed by them. So I didn't have that much imagination. Now, everything that matters can be measured, and we can model probabilities, but not possibility. So Professor David's message was not to chase uncertainty, but to build systems and cultures that remain resilient amid surprises. Now, for Khazanah, that means being rigorous yet flexible. Disciplined in analysis, but humble enough to change our minds. Structured enough to manage risks, yet imaginative enough to seize opportunity. Or, as one session put it, to be both the ant and the grasshopper. Prudent enough to prepare, and imaginative enough to leap. Now, the idea of humility led naturally to Professor Aisha Zarakol's reflection on history. She reminded us that what feels unprecedented may in fact be part of an old human rhythm, the recurring cycle of order or disorder and renewal. Her warning was clear. And this is what I got, and I remember this: yearning to go back to the old times is a disadvantage. So each age of turmoil tempts societies to retreat to familiar comfort, to rebuild what once worked. Yet history shows that nations that emerge stronger are those that embrace uncertainty rather than resist it. Now, for all of us, whether in policy, business, or investing, the lesson is the same. Nostalgia can be costly. Markets, institutions, and societies alike are punished when they fail to evolve. And perhaps that is why this year's KMF's theme resonates so deeply. Uncertainty is not a detour from progress. It is part of the journey that makes progress possible. Now, that spirit of adaptation was personified by James Mee, who shared his journey from a young scholar in China to a pioneer in Silicon Valley. Now, his story showed how openness and opportunity can transform not only a life, but an entire ecosystem. Now, he described how value creation is shifting from bits to atoms. From the code that runs our machines to the hardware, networks, and energy systems that make intelligence possible. Yet James also reminded us that amid automation, our humanity remains the true competitive edge. Curiosity, empathy, and critical thinking will always be the scarce resources in an AI-driven world. Now, in that sense, Malaysia's opportunity lies precisely in being a bridge between bits and atoms. See, between digital ideas and physical industries, between innovation and purpose. Now, across the sessions, from macro and markets to firms and transformation to innovation without borders, one message stood out. Resilience is not about risk avoidance, but adaptive renewal. Now, Professor Ming Lu illustrated this through China's experience, shifting from an era of infrastructure and investment to one that invests in people. The next phase of prosperity, he argued, will depend on education, services, and social innovation. Professor Ulrike Schroeder extended the theme through Japan's experience, showing how its so-called lost decades, Japanese firms reinvented themselves by adapting their strength, much like the sumo wrestler Mai Naomi, who changed his style to level the odds. She reminded us that there are many ways to think about capitalism, and that Japan's model of caring capitalism offers renewal through balance and purpose. And for Malaysia too, growth cannot rest on capital expenditure alone. We must invest in human capital, trust, and imagination. As investors, we must learn to value not just the tangible, but the intangible, and not just returns, but renewal. Now, governance, as the Prime Minister reminded us, is the moral compass that turns risk into innovation. The measure of our competence is not how perfectly we predict outcomes, it's how responsible we act amid uncertainty. So this brings me to the question of risk. In our portfolio management session, the speakers reminded us that the greatest risk is not taking one at all. In investing, as in life, the greater cost often comes from doing nothing at all. Now, as I take a quote from John F. Kennedy, he once said, "There are risks and costs to a program of action, but they are far less than the long-range risks and costs of comfortable inaction." Now, that line captures the essence of stewardship for us at Khazanah. Playing it safe is not always safe, and the world will not pause for those who hesitate. Our work sits across a wide spectrum of investments, each guided by the same intent: to preserve value, to create value, and to pass it on responsibly. It is about taking risks wisely, balancing prudence with imagination, governance with conviction, and patience with the courage to act. If there is one lesson this year's KMF has offered, it is that uncertainty is not our enemy. Complacency is. And from Sir David, we learned humility and imagination, to admit what we don't know and prepare for what we cannot predict. From Professor Zahir, perspective and adaptability, that every crisis belongs to a longer rhythm of order, disorder, and renewal. From James Mee, courage to create, proof that innovation begins when opportunity meets conviction. From Professor Ulrike Schede, the lesson that growth and care can coexist, that caring capitalism can be can turn purpose into strength. From Professor Ming Lu, the reminder that lasting growth depends on people, on education, inclusion, and opportunity. And also from our Prime Minister, the call to govern with competence and to lead with conscience. Now, together, they remind us that the future will belong not to those who know everything, but to those who keep learning, who keep acting, and keep believing in possibility. So I want to give a special thank you to all our speakers and panelists. So thank you very much. You've inspired us, and thank you for bringing such depth, diversity of thought to this year's forum. Your perspectives and debates are what give KMF its purpose and character. And please, let's give a round of applause to all the guest speakers. Thank you. When we began this forum 2 days ago, we said that uncertainty will not just impact us, it will impact everyone. And that is why we invite everyone here today. Now, KMF has never been about having all the answers. It is about asking the right questions together. It is a space where corporates, entrepreneurs, and policymakers can debate, imagine, because no single institution or nation can navigate disorder alone. If there is a defining spirit to KMF, it is this: that amid competing visions of disorder, we still choose dialogue over division. We have imagination over inertia, and we have courage over comfort. So, as we close this forum, let us leave not with certainty, but with a conviction that Malaysia can chart its own course, guided by credible governance, moral clarity, and the collective imagination of all who dare build it. Uncertainty, after all, is not the end of order. It is the beginning of possibility. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I hope these reflections offer some context for our young Berhad Senator and for all of us on the rich range of ideas that have emerged throughout this year's KMF, from humility and imagination to governance and growth, and from courage to conscience. And it is now my honor to invite Yang Amat Berhormat Senator Datuk Seri Amir Hamzah Azizan, Minister of Finance too, to the stage to deliver his closing remarks and to share his reflections on this year's theme of risk and uncertainty. Join me in welcoming Yang Amat.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Yang Mulia Tunku Ali Ridardin bin Ibni Tunku Muhriz, Tunku Besar Seri Menanti dan Chairman Astro, Board Members of Khazanah National Berhad, Datuk Amirul Feisal, Managing Director of Khazanah National Berhad, distinguished KMS speakers, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh dan salam Malaysia Madani. It is with great pleasure that I extend my warmest greetings to everyone here at the Khazanah Megatrends Forum 2025. Ladies and gentlemen, throughout generations, we have heard the story of the ant and the grasshopper. The ant toils in the summer, setting aside food, preparing for the cold months ahead. The grasshopper spends time in days in song and leisure, believing that the good times will last forever. When winter arrives, the ant endures, and the grasshopper struggles. This is not a children's tale, but a cautionary tale to all of us. It reminds us that nations do not stumble into prosperity. They plan for it. They do not inherit resilience, they build it. And that's why this year's theme, Debugging Uncertainty, Lessons from the Grasshopper and the Ant Living with Risk, speaks directly to the choices before Malaysia and the world. It is indeed my great honor to close this year's Khazanah Megatrends Forum. For the past 2 days, we have navigated the big question of our time through macro and markets, through science and philosophy, and through stories of remarkable Malaysians who inspires us all. I thank every speaker for their shared experience and expertise, every participant who asked probing questions, and Khazanah for convening this forum, not just as a meeting of minds, but as a commitment to Malaysia's future. History shows us that risk has always been with us. What defines us is never the absence of uncertainty, but the strength of our response. I'm reminded of 1998, during the Asian financial crisis, the sharp fall of the ringgit, jobs lost, households uncertain. It was very painful, but it also taught us the value of discipline, reserves, and reform. Like the ant, we learned that preparation is the only protection against winter. Back then, Bank Negara's international reserve was only about 20 billion US dollars in 1997, 1998. As at 30th September 2025, the international reserves of Bank Negara today stands at 123.6 billion ringgit, the highest level since November 2014. Yet today, the stakes are higher. Fiscal strains in Washington, tariff wars, the rise of artificial intelligence, and fragile supply chains test every economy. Uncertainty is now, as what KMF previously calls it, a normality. Uncertainty is not new. It has always tested markets and firms, communities and leaders. What matters now is how we respond with discipline, agility, and humility. Together, these discussions affirm a truth. Uncertainty is not a storm to sink us, but a tide to carry us forward. If we are prepared, if we are guided, if we hold our course. For Malaysia, this truth carries profound weight. We are a trading nation in a fragmented world, a vital node in shifting supply chains. Our vulnerabilities are real, but so too are our strengths. In the first half of 2025, GDP grew by 4.4%, driven by services and manufacturing sectors. Meanwhile, approved investments for the first half of 2025 stood at 190 billion ringgit, an 18.7% increase year-on-year. Inflation in August 2025 has eased to 1.3% from 1.8% last year, while unemployment has moderated to 3% from 3.3% in May 2024, the lowest in a decade. Malaysia's strength is not in trying to do everything, but in building on what we do best, advancing semiconductors, driving energy transition, deepening Islamic finance, and nurturing digital innovation. And like the ant in an ant colony, our power lies in coordination, linking industries, talent, and capital into something that is greater than the sum of its parts. Yet, we must also resist the temptation of the grasshopper to consume today and hope that tomorrow will provide. Instead, we must learn from the ant. We must prepare, invest, and build, not just in capital, but in talent, in trust, and in togetherness. For Malaysia, this means being willing to be making disciplined and sometimes difficult choices, investing in what may not pay off today, but which secures competitiveness for decades ahead. This is the spirit behind Gear Up, the government-linked enterprise activation and reform program, an important economic lever under Economy Madani. Through it, the government-linked investment companies have invested 120 billion ringgit over 5 years, channeled through domestic direct investments on top of the 440 billion investments in public investments. This will strengthen industries, create jobs, and future-proof Malaysia's economy. Just as how ants work together to move seemingly unsurmountable obstacles, Gear Up mobilizes the collective strength of our government-linked investment companies to catalyze key economic sectors, with each GLSCs tasked to lead their expertise to build Malaysia's economic complexity. Khazanah in semiconductors, for instance, EPF in healthcare, QUAP in the VC space, just to name a few. Already, we have seen over 22 billion unlocked in 2025, with 11 billion channeled into semiconductors, energy transition, VC ecosystems, healthcare access, and talent development. These are not small moves. They are coordinated strategic investments, each one positioning Malaysia to lead in future industries. The concept of pooling action for greater momentum under Gear Up has also realized the living wage implementation, ensuring 153,000 employees within the GLIC and GLC system will have, at the very least, a living wage of 3,100 ringgit, as opposed to a minimum wage of 1,007. Therefore, starting to set new benchmarks for fair pay in the country. As this cascades through the GLC systems, tens of thousands of Malaysian households will build better financial resilience as we navigate the challenges ahead. In short, this is how we future-proof Malaysia, advancing innovation while safeguarding social protection, so resilience is both inclusive and enduring. Ladies and gentlemen, beyond capital, uncertainty demands character. Leadership today is not about having all the answers, but having the humility to seek them. The three hardest words, as we have been reminded, is I don't know. Admitting it is not a weakness. It is wisdom. It is the humility that opens dialogue, invites diverse perspectives, and builds stronger solutions. In times of crisis, people don't need perfect answers. They need honest leadership. This is the spirit of Malaysia Madani: sustainability, care, respect, innovation, inclusivity, and trust. True resilience is not measured in markets or balance sheets alone, but in values and community. That is why Khazanah is restoring landmarks like the Karkosa Seri Negara and the Bangunan Sultan Abu Samad, and through Yayasan Hasanah, making sure growth reaches grassroots, so it is felt in people's lives, not just in statistics. True resilience grows when leaders are humble, when communities are strong, when institutions endure, and when a nation remembers its roots, even as it prepares for the future. And when we speak of resilience, we need only to look at Malaysians themselves. Consider the story we have heard in Malaysiana, stories of spectacular Malaysians. Anis, who uses a lens to tell the stories of women and communities. Professor Datuk Dr. Jafri Malin Abdullah, a neurosurgeon from USM, advancing our understanding of human brain. Dr. Ku Teng Jian, who pushes boundaries of physics at CERN. Dr. Louisa Shoh Bini, who pioneered marine research to protect whales and dolphins in our waters. These Malaysians embody perseverance and foresight, working quietly, persistently, preparing for a future we cannot yet imagine. Or consider the resilience of our economy. Even as the global tides challenge us, Malaysia has shown resilience. Record foreign direct investments, stronger ringgit, improved competitiveness, falling unemployment, and low inflation. These are not accidents, but the results of deliberate choices. Like the ant, resilience is never finished. It must be renewed, tested, and strengthened in every generation. Ladies and gentlemen, in just a few days, Malaysia will table its budget 2026. At its core, this budget is about preparation, protecting households from today's pressure, while laying the foundation for tomorrow's growth. For the family, balancing the monthly budget, or the young Malaysians searching for their first job, uncertainty is not an idea, it is a lived reality. Budget 2026 is designed with them at its heart. Take our Budi 95, our new targeted RON 95 subsidy program. For everyday Malaysian, it keeps fuel affordable. For the nation, it closes subsidy leakages and frees up between 2.5 billion to 4 billion ringgit annually. Money that can better redirect for better schools, stronger healthcare, and modern infrastructure. Relief for families, and strength for Malaysia's future. Beyond fuel, Budget 2026 will strengthen social protection and lift household resilience. At the same time, invest in Malaysia's future. Semiconductors, energy transition, digitalization, startups, and industries of the future. Our direction is clear. Malaysia will reindustrialize with a new industrial master plan, lead in semiconductor through the National Semiconductor Strategy, accelerate energy transition, and embrace digitalization and innovation. All these strategies share one goal: to secure better jobs, stronger businesses, and brighter future for our children. The budget also secures our fiscal foundations, narrowing the fiscal deficit to 3.8% of GDP this year, reducing reliance on debt, and strengthening governance through the Fiscal Responsibility Act 2023 and the new laws on transparency. And Budget 2026 is not a standalone exercise. It is also the opening act of the 13th Malaysia Plan, RMK 13, which will chart our course forward from 2026 to 2030. If Budget 2026 is about preparation, then RMK 13 is about direction, steering our nation through a decisive decade of transformation. RMK 13 will not just be a plan for the economy. It will be a plan for Malaysians. For workers, it means better jobs. For households, more affordable living. For small businesses, stronger support to grow. For the young, more opportunities to stay and succeed at home. When we speak of the ant, it reminds us and reminds me of our own wisdom. Sedikit-sedikit lama-lama menjadi bukit. The proverb teaches us that small steps done with discipline grows into lasting strength. Every saving, every reform, every investment builds upon over time. This is how Malaysia prepares today and prospers tomorrow. Ladies and gentlemen, later this month, Malaysia will host the 47th ASEAN Summit as ASEAN Chair. Some may ask, what does ASEAN Summit mean for the ordinary Malaysian? The truth is, just like the ant in the fable, even the hardest worker cannot prepare alone. Ants survive winter because they meet, they decide, they act together. ASEAN too must do the same. When ASEAN leaders meet, it is not about diplomacy alone. It is about making sure supply chains remain connected, so exporters keep markets. It is about building food security, so households are shielded from sudden price shocks. As chair of ASEAN, Malaysia's role is to make cooperation real. So ASEAN is not just another meeting, but a platform that helps families, workers, and small businesses face uncertainty with greater clarity. If Budget 2026 and RMK 13 prepare Malaysia for resilience at home, then the ASEAN Summit must do the same for the region, so that 680 million people, including every Malaysian, can face the future not alone, but together. Ladies and gentlemen, as we close KMF 2025, let us carry forward three convictions. First, embrace uncertainty as a teacher. It forces us to prepare, adapt, and innovate. Second, invest let our capital not only chase returns, but build resilience, ecosystems, and futures. Third, lead with humility and admit what we do not know. Commit to what we can build together. To all who have made this forum possible, speakers, organizers, partners, participants, thank you. The conversations that we have had are not an end, but the beginning of new collaborations. Uncertainty will always be a part of our journey. But if we stand together, making sure families can put food on the table, workers are fairly paid, and businesses grow, then Malaysia stands steady no matter what the storm is. For Malaysia, living with risk means having the resolve to strengthen our people, the courage to lead in new industries, the confidence to rise stronger as a nation that creates our own future. This is how Malaysia moves forward, step by step, together, ensuring our future is defined not by uncertainty, but our choices. On that note, ladies and gentlemen, I conclude my remarks as we bring the curtain down on Khazanah Megatrends Forum 2025. My heartfelt congratulations to Dr. Feisal and the Khazanah team on yet another successful edition, the 20th of its series. I look forward to seeing you all again next year and to many more decades of KMF shaping ideas for Malaysia's future. Thank you very much. Wabillahi taufiq wa hidayah. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you, Yang Berhormat, for the thoughtful remarks. Esteemed guests, ladies and gentlemen, with that, we have reached the end of Khazanah Megatrends Forum 2025. 3 quick things before we say goodbye. As you head out, please return your lanyards at the boxes outside. By doing so, you help contribute to a more sustainable future. 2. If you scan this QR code, you can rate all the sessions over the past 2 days, which helps us immensely in curating future KMFs. And finally, we'd love your feedback on this year's KMF. You can fill in the survey by scanning the QR code on the screen.
Ladies and gentlemen, what an incredible 2 days. We hope you have taken a lesson or two from the grasshopper and ant and are certainly ready to debug uncertainty and live with risks. Thank you for joining us, and we look forward to having you next year at our 21st Khazanah Megatrends Forum. Safe journey home and have a great week ahead.